You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi guys, thanks for coming back to join me on the show. Though, as you probably know by now, I should be out on the John Muir Trail. In fact, if you're listening to this show on the Thursday of its release, I will be on my second day of the trail, and hoping that my preparations for this hike are more successful than my previous JMT hike attempts. You're listening to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis, and I am Mighty Blue. As I mentioned last week, these episodes when I'm away are going to be shorter, yet I think I found some great people to talk with, and I hope that you get something out of them all. Today's show is, I promise you, nothing short of miraculous. Our guest is a guy called Richie Holbrook. Richie was introduced to me by one of this year's more interesting hikers. Her name is Shannon Finn, or Joy. Richie had shared his story with Joy, and she reached out to tell me about him. What he told me was literally amazing. And hang about for an extra minute at the end, because I've got a funny outtake for you. Richie says something so disarming that I get totally lost and we both crack up. Let me tell you, editing that part was a trip, so I had to take it out. So let's hear from Richie, and if you're always putting barriers in your way to do a long hike, take a moment every now and then to think about Richie, or Walks with Donor. Here he is. Now, this week's guest has a truly amazing story, and he shows that the odds, however seemingly overwhelming, can be beaten. This is Richie Holbrook, or Walks with Donor. Hey Richie, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Steve.
Now, I was actually referred to you by Shannon Finn, or Joy, who is currently hiking the AT and having a real adventure out there. She met you out there, didn't she?
Oh, yes. I met quite a few people out there, but yeah, she's special.
Yeah, she seems to be having quite the adventure as well. And I'm going to be having Joy on the show when she finishes her adventure this year. But right now, I want to talk about you. A few years back, I think it's pretty fair to say that you would not have been a prime candidate for the Appalachian Trail, would you? Tell us what it was that was holding you back from this.
Well, in 2010, I was diagnosed as terminally ill with lung disease and pulmonary hypertension, so I needed a lung transplant. In 2011, I was in a wheelchair until 2012 when I got the lung transplant.
And you were on oxygen as well, weren't you?
Oh, yeah, I was on 15 liters of oxygen, which is quite a bit.
And your voice sounds a little hoarse now. Is that the after effects of that?
Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. It's just the way it is.
Or have you just got a sexy voice like me?
Yeah,
that could be it. That could be it. So you had to go in for a double lung transplant. How urgent was it? Was there a list? Because I know you're called Walks with Donor, and we're going to talk about that later. Was there a list that you were on?
Oh, well, I wasn't quite on the transplant list yet. I was supposed to get on in September, and we went for a regular appointment July 30th, and he said, get right to the hospital now, the doctor. And I was in a hospital that doesn't do transplants because it was the nearest hospital.
Jeez.
And so the transplant hospital, they did some negotiating. I thought I was only there a few hours, but I was in and out of consciousness quite a bit.
Right.
And I found out later it was a couple of days, but they did a lot of negotiating, and they came out with an ambulance and an ECMO machine. I didn't know they had portable ECMO machines. That's the heart-lung bypass.
Right.
And they picked me up, and I said goodbye to the wife. She said goodbye to me because the odds were pretty much against me. And I thought you had to wait until you got on the list. And I evidently jumped the list. And I woke up about a week later from a medical coma, and they told me I had lungs. And I was somewhat surprised because I thought I had died.
Oh, gosh. So hang on. My brother had an illness where he was unconscious for about 11 days. Did you dream while you were unconscious, or did you just totally black out?
Oh, I I don't know when the brain started to come on, but when it started to come on, when I started to regain consciousness, the last thing I remembered was dying. So I was wondering where I was.
Oh, gosh. Oh my God! but,
Yeah.
but as I said right at the beginning, you are not a prime candidate for doing the Appalachian Trail. So I think we should go back a little bit, give a bit of background before we carry on, because you've been in the military. Is that right?
Oh yeah, I did 4 in the Corps, 4 in the Marines, and that was
Right.
back in the '70s, the late '70s.
Okay, so you're a determined kind of guy, and that background is worth knowing because of what you then went through as well. So how did you, when you woke up and you weren't dead, once you realised you weren't dead, how did you respond to what was happening around you? I mean, what was your state of mind then? Did you suddenly feel this is much better, or did you just feel terrible?
Well, physically I was much better. I mean, I looked at the machine and didn't believe there was a 99 on my oxygen level. I was much better that way. But
Right.
it took me a few months to realize I was really on planet Earth and not in some alternate reality. I had to reconnect with my body.
Right. So, as I said, you're a determined kind of guy, and I know that you had to go into rehab. What was the plan for you for rehab?
Oh, well, the typical plan is first they taught me how to walk, and they wouldn't release me until I could do at least 12 steps. So I got released late in August, and then they put you on a rehab, and they have you start walking on a treadmill and moving and stuff. But it took me, I did a lot of it on my own because I didn't think they were going to bring me back to, good health. They were going to bring me back to health that was okay, but I wanted to be a little bit better than that. So I started exercising on my own, and it took me till October before I could do 1 mile at 1 mile an hour on the treadmill.
Wow.
And then I knew I was back. Yeah.
So I know they had a plan for you, but you were, because of your determination, you wanted to do that much more, didn't you?
Oh, yes.
So, and then you kept going. So how did you expand that exercise?
They only have you exercising 3 days a week and
Right.
an hour on each of those times. And I knew that wasn't going to bring me to where I wanted to be. So I did a lot of exercises. I know the astronauts do 2 hours a day. So I figured I'm in an extreme situation. I'm going to do 2 hours a day. So
Wow.
I would spend 2 hours on a treadmill and 2 hours doing weights and stuff, resistance training.
So were you up for that? I mean, obviously you, in your mind you were, but did your body allow you to do it, or were you stretching your lungs too far at all?
Oh no, it took the better part of a year to come back to like normal. Yeah, I was doing very well. We were so happy that in the 5th year, that's what I decided to do, the Appalachian Trail. I was doing much better than most people. Most people, they say they plateau in their 3rd and 4th year. And here I was at my 5th year, which is the life expectancy for double lung transplants.
Wow.
And I was still going up. My numbers were still going up. My capacities were going up.
So that was in 2017. And I know that you added to your workload, I guess, by starting to kayak, which I suspect is quite lung intensive as well. Tell us about the kayaking.
Oh, yes, I kayaked like 3 years in a row. I didn't do it the first year, 2013, but 14, 15, and 16, I did from Albany to New York City.
How far is that?
About 160 some odd miles. So, but it's the Hudson River, so it's got a little bit of tidal. You have some, the tide working with you, but it's still a little distance.
Yeah. Were you actually outdoorsy as a kid? Was it, because I'm wondering how the AT came into your life? What the thought process was there? Were you an outdoorsy kid?
I was always, I've been outdoors and active, but I've also been indoors and a computer nerd. So, but now I knew I had to get physically in shape, because the only way to fight off some of the side effects from the meds is to be very physically active.
Right. And I know that you suffered a major setback in around 2018, which must have been 6 years after your op was 2012, I believe, wasn't it?
Yes.
And you say you did your 5-year visit, and that went well, and your numbers were good. But then something bad happened in 2018, didn't it?
Yes, I went into rejection, which at the time I thought was a death sentence, but you have a shot. They have enough treatments and a lot of different ones, and they gave me thymoglobin, Rat G, is the abbreviation, which is basically they mix your blood with the serum blood of a rabbit. And I got through that, and it worked. He told me it was a 35% chance it would work, and it worked. It halted it from progressing any further. So
all the time you've got a family, seeing you struggle to get fit and get back to some sort of level of normality. And I guess by now, if you've paddled down the Hudson, I presume it's down the Hudson, isn't it, from Albany?
Yes.
If you've paddled down the Hudson for 100 odd miles, they can see you getting fit. It must have been devastating to have this setback. How did your family respond when you started talking about doing the AT?
Well,
which by the way, even paddling 170 odd miles does not make you a candidate for the AT, but it's amazing to me. But yeah, so what was their reaction when you said you wanted to do it?
Well, they thought I was crazy when I did the kayak trips.
Good Lord.
Yes. So they all think I'm crazy now. But my wife has supported me in just about everything I've done. And we negotiated. Originally, I was going to try and do the whole thing in one shot. And we talked about it. And it made sense to break it up into two big sections. 100 days each year.
Right. So you but why the AT? I mean, why not the PCT? Why not to walking across America? Why not cycling across America? Was there something about the AT that resonated with you, or was it something that was kind of in the back of your mind already?
Not really in the back of my mind. I can remember one time we were driving down to Disney World, I believe, and someone said, people walk from Georgia to Maine? And I said, don't they know they invented the wheel? So it wasn't a thing long-term on my radar. But as I was exercising, I'm in the house on a treadmill, and I'm watching all these YouTube videos. And I saw Bigfoot do it in 100 days. And I said, well, I'll never be able to do that. And I watched a few other people, Dixie and Darwin. And then I saw a couple regular people do it. And they looked like I could do that. They took 200 days roughly. And Red Mage and Underdog. And I said, I think I can do that. And then I got the idea that I'm going to try it.
Do you know what? I just kind of pause here. For those of you who I know I know there's a lot of audience for some of these videos. So some people love them, some people hate them. And frankly, social media gives them a hard time. But how inspirational that looking at somebody else doing it, and I love the fact that you said you saw like ordinary people do it, how inspirational it is to inspire somebody like Richie here that, you would never imagine you could do this sort of thing. So anybody who wants to go out on that trail and start videoing, you carry on because it does something for people. And, it made you want to do it, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. When I saw Red Mage, and I didn't think he was going to last 2 weeks, but I watched him anyhow. And he went ahead and he pushed. And, he was a young guy in his maybe 30s, I guess. And he was out there towards the end. He finally accepted it, and he was out there with all the 60-year-old guys. And but he made it.
All right. So there you are. You got your plan. You can do 100 days each year. So that should have been a piece of cake, of course. But of course it wasn't, was it?
No, not
and
at all.
And you started in July 2019. How did that go?
Yeah, that went real well. I did 2 days. And I got to the water spot there, and I filled up my water along the bridge on the approach trail. And I realized I was not going to make it there was about a 6.6 mile stretch between there and the next water supply. And there was nothing I could do about it. And so I had to call it then. The other thing is my hip was going bad. It's a side effect of the meds. So I said, I'll be back. And I went back home very defeated. And
yeah, tell me about that. Tell me, because I when we spoke the other day, it's the thought process you keep having. You think you can do this. That's the bit that's the most amazing to me. But after 2 days, still on the approach trail, you went home. That must have been devastating, or did it just make you more determined?
Oh, it was devastating, but it made me more determined. It did both. It did both. The devastation goes ahead and I have to rethink, regroup, and come up with a new plan. I know I can do this. Right. I mean, I was in pretty good shape, and still, however, I did need the new hip. So
yes, apart from the hip, yes. So yeah. you got a new hip, and now something I'm not sure everybody heard when we were talking, when you mentioned it earlier on. They had to basically the drugs kill your immune system, didn't it?
Oh yeah. So I have to be very careful for noro And then they go ahead and throw COVID in the mix the next year.
Well, that was it. So your plan was going on in 2020. And of course, we got COVID. So probably quite rightly, you decided not to go because of COVID. Were you starting to get feel a bit defeated by then, or did you was once again this is not going to get in my way? Because your determination has been amazing, Richie. It really is. Because I know that you went this year, obviously, because you met Joy out there, and then you had what I can only call an experience on the approach trail. You started April the 1st. Is that April
Correct.
the 1st, wasn't it?
April 1st.
Just what date did you get to the top of Springer, the top of the approach trail?
Oh, 4 days later. it was a long approach trail. Well, the one thing that annoyed me was they had a storm down there a couple of days before I got there, and it took out the stairs because I wanted to time myself from my original. The first time I went on the stairs, and it took me an hour and a half, but I made it all 604 stairs. Wow. And it took an hour and a half, so I said, okay, I want to see if I can do it in an hour this time. Well, I couldn't do it because the stairs were closed. So I had to go the other way. And for anybody who's curious, the stairs are easier. So I went the other way, and you end up at the top of the falls either way. But the ground there is, it's like an old riverbed. It's no longer got water in it, but you've got all the rocks on the bottom, and your ankles have to move like they're on ball joints. It's very hard. And I had people, because I would take a break every so many feet, and I had people come over to me and say, do you need help? And I say, no, I'm fine.
That's not encouraging start, is it?
Yeah, because it happened like at least 6 to 8 times, and it's like knocking your confidence out. And then you can see that the next question is like, would you like me to call an ambulance? So
amazing. That is just amazing. So you took 4 days to get to the top. Did you camped, I presume, in stealth spots on the way?
3 stealth spots, and the last one I did in a shelter. Actually, no, I was still in my tent, but it was around a shelter.
Yeah. So you'd started, and that must have, do you know what, joking aside, that must have felt quite an achievement just to get to the start.
Oh,
but
yeah.
That obviously wasn't going to be enough for you. When you told people your story, how did they respond to you in those? Let's say that first night at the shelter, which I presume was right the one at the top of Springer. How did people respond to you?
Most people were kind of in disbelief, and then they were just like amazed that anyone would have the audacity to even try it. So. And
how did you feel? What did you feel?
I was still disappointed because I was expecting to do, between 5 and 10 on the way up, and not 2 or 3 every day. But it made me feel nice that people were acknowledging that I had a little bit more of a challenge than they did.
Yeah. So talk us through those early days. Did it always seem worth it to you? Were you enjoying yourself, or was it such a struggle that it took away some of the joy of it?
Yeah, that first week was not exactly enjoyable. It was a fight every night with myself to keep on going, but damn it, I was going to at least get to the top of Springer. And then when I got to the top of Springer, I felt bad for everybody else because they were, excuse me, that's the alarm for the driveway. The other people were, lulled into this false sense of security. The first 2 or 3 miles off of Springer is a piece of cake compared to the approach trail. And I was like, oh, these poor people are going to get a rude awakening in about 5 miles.
Oh, dear me. So you head off and you start hiking. And I presume because most of the shelters are spread out relatively, not equidistant, but relatively 8 or 10 miles apart. You couldn't make that for those, obviously, during that first month. Were you pretty much by yourself most of the time while you're hiking in those early months?
Yeah, most of the time. I was pretty much by myself, but that's kind of the way I wanted it, to avoid the germs. So it wasn't a bad thing.
Oh, right. So that was actually part of your plan, to be hiking by yourself. Do you think the lack of social interaction in those early days marred your hike, or it was just a necessary thing because of your need to avoid germs? Yeah,
it was kind of a necessary thing, and I'm okay being by myself most of the time. But later on, I did. Well, I had a wonderful time. I avoided most of the rain and the bad weather, and it's now. It's a little further down the road, and there's a hostel above the clouds.
Right.
It's about 20 miles out.
Sure.
And I stopped there, and that's where I met a lot of people who told my story. And,
Right. And so you were meeting meeting some people, and it was obviously you were kind of getting into the hike. Did you feel yourself strengthening? And how were your lungs at that time? Because I recalled the other day you were talking about your lungs and how they have reacted differently to other people's lungs.
That was the question. Yes, they're not tied in the same way that everybody else's is. At the bottom, they're not. They're only affixed a little bit to the diaphragm, but mostly to the outside abdomen wall. And if I fall for it every now and then, where I have to breathe differently, and I really have to concentrate and breathe with my stomach, my belly button, push it out and bring it back in. Otherwise, the bottom half of the lungs are not being used.
Wow. So you have to train yourself to use your lungs properly.
Yes, exactly. Because otherwise, you're out of air. You only go up a little bit. And it took me a while to figure that out, that's what was slowing me down.
And had you had this conversation with your doctor before you went, or I presume you had, of this is what you're intending to do, and he must have told you you're crazy, of course. Did he explain this is what had happened to your lungs and you should be careful with that?
We had done this conversation quite a few times over the years when I went mountain biking with my wife. I was doing the mountain biking, I'm fine. Right. But then as soon as I got off the bike and stood up, oh my goodness, I was out of breath like I was when I was in oxygen. It was awful. And they explained it to me. That's when they explained to me that the lungs have to drop back down. And at that point, they're full of carbon dioxide in the bottom half. So as it goes through the top half, all of a sudden you have no air. And that's why you feel like you're out of breath.
Wow. What about the rest of the physicality? You could, once, aside from your lungs, was your legs fine? Was the rest of your body fine? Or has what's happened to you affected the rest of your body as well? Obviously, you mentioned your hip and so on.
Yeah, there are weak spots. The liver the kidneys are pretty bad because of the drugs. But I'm stage 3 kidney failure. But the rest of the legs and stuff, I've been working quite a bit. I've been going up and down the stairs with a 25-pound, 30-pound pack on my back 50 times a day. That was one of my exercises. So the legs are pretty good, the big muscles. A lot of the subtle muscles down in the calves and stuff, the helper muscles, were like screaming like, what the hell are you doing? Because now I'm not going up and down stairs. Stairs are more, they're uniform. And
yes.
Yeah, the trail is nothing uniform about it.
Yeah, and I guess you realised that straight away, didn't you? Because
yes.
you did stair training. I've said this to people before. If they stand on the top of Springer Mountain, if they think they prepared, they really haven't. You start preparing when you're on the trail, I think, from a personal point of view. So you got through those early days. Did you eventually get yourself into some sort of rhythm which looked like other people's hikes, or was it constantly a struggle to do 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 miles a day?
Well, yeah. After the first month, and we talked at the hostel, and that was very helpful. The guys there and the other people there. After I started getting stronger after 10 days. You could feel the things changing, and they said it's going to be a month before you're in shape. They said that's just the way it is for everybody. So, and by the end of that month, though, I was still going up hills is no fun. I don't appreciate it when it's more than an hour or two and you're all going up. It's time to you start thinking about, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm quitting today. And then, but when you get to the top, the flats and the downs are fine. I have no problem with them. I go a little slower because of the osteoporosis from the from the drugs. But I know if I hit a rock, I'm going to break something. So I go a little slower and I'm a little more cautious.
Well, because Blood Mountain seems to be endless, doesn't it? Going up it in Georgia.
Well, no, I went the other way. I got slack packed. They dropped me off at Mountain Crossing.
O'Neill Gap. Oh, right.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And I went up, but it took me 3.5 hours to get to the cabin up there to that thing. And it was tough, but it was my first double-digit day. And then I walked back, and I got there about 8 o'clock, and they picked me up down at Woody Gap. And I went back and ate, and ate.
I bet you did, yeah. Did you develop the big hiker hunger as well?
I never really got it, but I eat funny anyhow. I've always eaten. I mean, I can order a pizza now and eat the whole thing. So,
and I know people are probably wondering how far you did get, and you didn't give up, did you? Tell everybody how far you actually got for this year.
Oh, for this year, I was disappointed, but I got 500 miles, so that's nothing to sneeze at. Um, I got to the Grayson Highlands, and for like a day or two, I wasn't quite, I was trying to do 10 to 15 mile days, and I was getting
Sure.
8 mile days. I wasn't up to it. And that last day, I says, oh, I've got to go into, at least a clinic and get my blood tests and get all my levels checked. So I walked down to Massey Gap, and that took me all day, and that was only 4 miles from the shelter. And there were a couple guys that met me towards the end, and they insisted that I see the ranger. And the ranger he was trying to call a shuttle for me to bring me somewhere, and then he said, I'm going to call you an ambulance. But he started with the helicopter, and I was like, no, I'm fine. I just need my blood taken and find out where I am. So he called a small ambulance, a volunteer ambulance in town, and they drove me to the hospital. And I spent a couple of days there. They hung 7 bags of fluid and some antibiotics because I also had an infection. And my numbers came back, back to where they should be, my kidney numbers. So,
it's not one of my questions, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why? Why are you doing this to yourself? Why? Wasn't going to be one of my questions, and if you don't, it's not meant to be rude or anything like that. But this sounds like torture to me. Why do you do it?
No, I enjoyed a lot of it. I mean, standing Indian, you look over that cliff, that's like one of the most dramatic scenes I've ever seen. Especially because it took me almost a month to get there, I think. And at that point, a lot of things I saw were nice, but that was really like breathtaking, literally. And then I've seen others since then that were just as good, if not better. And it was amazing. But also I wanted to see if I could do it. I wanted to see if somebody with 2 new sets of lungs, a set of 2 new lungs, and could actually do it. And I think once you get past the Smokies, you can do it, barring any unforeseen circumstances.
I agree with you. I think the Smokies is quite a big test, though, isn't it, as well? But once you get through it, you think, I can do this now, yeah. So once you got to Massey Gap was 502 miles. So you must have passed a 500 miles stone sign or something like that. People put the stones on the ground or leaves on the ground. Did you do that? Did you pass a 500
Oh,
mile?
yeah. I stopped and I did a little song for my grandson. He likes 500 miles. That's his song. So I had to do that.
It must have been quite emotional for you. I mean, when I was thinking about it, it was kind of emotional to me to even think about what you've put yourself through to do this. How when you decided to go home 502 miles for this year, what's your thought process for going forward? What's going to happen next?
Well, I'm going to try and get in better shape for next year. Look up where a couple more labs are so that I can get in and get a lab done after 6 weeks, because I was trying to find one in each town we stopped at, right. Because the sooner you catch it, the better it is.
Right. And I presume, obviously, well, you saw a doctor straight away, but your own doctor, who's obviously seen you through this, how has the hike affected you physically? Have your lungs held up well? I mean, this must have shocked even you about how you've been able to do this, hasn't it?
Oh, pleasantly surprised. But I still had that feeling that I can do this. I've run 5Ks and stuff like that, so I can.
Yeah. Come on. That's not the same thing.
No. It's not. It took me a while to work up to going 10 and 12-hour days.
I'm sure.
Yeah. But like coming out of the Smokies, I did a 15. They have that one shelter closed, and you have to stay near the shelters. So we did a 15-mile day. Coming out of there. Now a lot of it's downhill, which is nice, but still it's 15 miles.
And what about mentally? Has your experience on the trail this year affected you mentally? I mean, in a good way? I mean, I presume it's given you a massive amount of confidence to have done 500 miles. And there'll be listeners thinking, oh my gosh, I couldn't possibly do that. So what has your mental approach been? Is it always that you want to prove that you can do it and you're just going to darn well do it?
But that's part of it. But then also you have to break it down into, okay, I'm just going to do tomorrow to lunch. After lunch, I'm just going to do the next step. And you have to break it down into smaller steps and just take each step as it comes, each section. Today I'm just going to this shelter, or until 6 o'clock, and then I start looking for a place to set the tent up.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. Now, your trail name is Walking with Donor.
Walks with Donor.
Walks with Donor, rather. Sorry, Walks with Donor, and you're actually walking with your donor, aren't you? That's what it is.
We're attached to the heart.
Exactly.
Literally.
Did you ever get to know who that person was?
No, I have not pursued it. I wish they had a different system where they could go ahead and fill out a card at the donor thing and say whether or not they want to be contacted. I did meet a man and a woman, a couple, and they told me that they donated their daughter's organs when she died. She was killed by a drunk driver, they said. Oh, and so we got to talk, and I could see it from that point of view. They don't want to meet them. They just want to know they did the right thing and that it was them. So they got a lot of satisfaction out of meeting me and me them.
I bet they did.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm sure that if you were able to meet the family of whoever donated your lungs, then they'd be massively proud of what you've done with their, fathers or daughters, sons. Yeah, I mean, that would just be an amazing thing to know. And I know that part of your reason for going is about letting people know the importance of organ donation. And what do you want to let people know about organ donation and how important it is?
When it works, it works. It's wonderful. I got bonus life. I mean, I was a dead man in 2 days. That's why they had to up me on that list. That's why I jumped the line. It was over. And I was very surprised to come back. And, yeah, I'm enjoying the hell out of it. And also, I would like everyone else to really consider being an organ donor. And also, we could get the laws changed where it was the default option instead of you had to sign up for it. Yeah, if you really don't want to be a donor, fine. I think it's the wrong decision, but I support it 100%. And you should be able to opt out, but it shouldn't be an opt-in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the really important thing. But because I think I did it on my driving license. When I got my driving license, you have to opt in, or you have to opt in. I would far rather that I'd been in and they allowed me to opt out, far rather they'd allow me to do that. Exactly. So we really want people, if they can, to think what these lungs have done to somebody who was 2 days away from being dead, was in a wheelchair, was on oxygen just 10 years ago, isn't it? Yeah, 10 years ago.
It'll be my 9th year, August 1st.
So you did say earlier on that your prognosis for those new lungs was 5 years, and you've had the 5 years plus 4 more. What are they saying your prognosis is with those lungs now?
They're just guessing. They don't know. I know people who've done 20 years. The way they figure life expectancy, it's the average of everybody. And some people don't get off the table. It's unfortunate, but it's a rough operation. And, it's less and less each year. They get better and better. And, the first year is one of the toughest because that's when your body's adjusting to it and to the meds. And some people don't make it off past that first year. So that brings the numbers down quite a bit.
Yeah. And what about the rest of your body? Is that functioning okay now? Or because without an immune system, I mean, that itself is an issue, isn't it?
Yes. I've been in the hospital a few times for things that normal people would have just shaken off in a day. Right. I get a cold and it's serious. I got to go to the hospital. Other people get a cold and they just stay a day in bed. Sure. But and I've got the kidney disease from it, and I've got the osteopenia from it, not porosis, sorry. And then a few other ailments, like, I took the hip out and stuff like that. But it's better than, looking at this grass from the green side is better than looking at it from the brown side.
Sorry. That was good. You've said that before, obviously.
Yes.
That is funny. Well, look, I tell you, I'm enormously grateful that Joy reached out to me to have you on the show. I'm honoured that you came on to talk to us. And what I'd invite you to do is when you do go back next year, you come and talk to us about it again, because this is just remarkable. And I wish you well, and I hope you stay well, and I hope you can get back on the trail to do another 500 miles next year.
Oh, yeah. I didn't do any permanent damage. That was one of my stipulations. No permanent damage. So.
Okay. Well, good. Well, good to talk to you, man. And don't know what to say. So just stay well.
Oh, I intend to. To get better. Thank you.
Okay, buddy. Take it easy. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Wow. Can you believe that determination? There were times in that conversation that I was just shaking my head. And when I asked him why, I didn't mean to be rude. I think I know why. But I think a better question might have been how. But why just came to me. People want to do a long trail for so many different reasons and at so many different points in their life. As I said, Richie wasn't a prime candidate, and frankly, I don't know how he did 500 miles this year. I just have no idea. But he did. He had the passion, he had the drive, and he got it done. 4 days on the approach trail. No problem. New hip, no immune system, no problem. But he kept right on, and when he comes back on the trail next year, we are definitely going to hear from him again. Thanks to all of you who have been supporting the show in my absence. I'll be back soon. Hopefully not too soon, because I've screwed up on the JMT again, and we'll be having our longer shows once more. And just before we go, it's that outtake that I mentioned. It makes both of us crack up, and it proves that editing a podcast is a very necessary skill. As you can hear, we both lost it, and neither of us could remember what we just said. I'll see you next week. So, I mean, I don't know the physiological reasons this thing happens. They give you somebody, a donor's lungs, and does your body have to learn how to use those lungs, or are they like my lungs?
Okay, no, they are attached differently at the bottom, and I didn't run into this for almost a year because I didn't do too many outside things because of germs. First, they take out your immune system with with the drugs, and then so you have to limit your contact to any kind of outside germs and stuff like that. And then you're what was the question?
It's okay. It's okay. No, I'll have to cut that then. Sorry. That was great. No. It was, what did I say now?
Something to do with rehab.
Let me think.